alongside me for the duration are both Martin Dwyer, as usual, and Jim Crowley as well. Welcome both. I have to say, I feel a bit blessed over the last couple of weeks. Had Callum Shepherd one week, Jim Crowley this week, and I'm so used to the likes of George Baker and Martin Dwyer. It's just a bit refreshing, to be honest, Jim. How are you? Good to see you.
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
No, pleasure, absolutely. And Martin, how are you as well? Hope you've had a nice week since I last saw you.
Yeah.
Enjoying the jumps racing? I imagine you're probably not, but hopefully you are.
I've been following it, yeah, trying to get me eye in, but this man will know more about jumps than me. He started life as a jump jockey. We'll hear all about that through the programme, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to discussing the early days with you, Jim. But at the moment, before we get to that a little bit later, how are things currently? Are you taking it easy this winter? What are you going to be doing? Yeah,
obviously, Shadwell's still got a few to run. I think we've got a sort of week of no racing starting this week, so I'm actually going to go out to Baaeed and ride in a jockey's challenge. I must be mad because everybody who's gone on it keeps saying, yeah, you'll find it interesting, you know.
Have you ridden there before?
No, first time.
Garrison Savannah. I'll give you one piece of advice. Don't walk the track before you ride it. Garrison Savannah, it's the tightest track in the world. It makes Chester look like York. I mean, it is...
Did you ride there yourself?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And we walked the track and thought, oh, I just don't fancy this. It literally is so tight. But, I mean, from past the winning post, the first turn, it's literally straight into a wall. And it's like a right angle. Not trying to scare you.
Is that why everyone said it's like interesting? Because it's actually quite dangerous.
I've heard a few things. They say Pat Edry went for about 14 years and never had a winner. He just went for the beer, you know.
Went for the holiday.
Went for the holiday, but I think I've been sort of desensitised going to places like that because some of the places I went jumping and what have you. So I shouldn't be too worried about it. But
it'll be good fun.
It'll be good fun.
The horses don't go
I don't know what it's like that at the moment, but hopefully a bit of sunshine for you.
Yeah, exactly. So I just hope I don't put on too much weight out there.
Jim, we already touched on it a bit about how you got from jumps to flats, but what we didn't say or ask was how you got into racing originally in the first place. So how did that happen?
Actually, my parents trained point-to-pointers, so I grew up around sort of racing, and but I never really wanted to be a jockey. I wasn't that keen on it, and then I left school, and I had a girlfriend who lived near a racing yard, so I used to go and see her, and realised that it was quite handy that the racing yard was close by. So I just got a summer job riding out for a chap called Con Holgan, and that's how I started. That was my first job in racing. And
so where was this, in Sussex?
No, a place called Binfield. So Con trained just probably about 2 miles from Ascot.
Oh,
I was actually born in the hospital right opposite the racecourse.
Ascot?
Yeah, so...
Things you do for love, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, at the time, yeah.
Best thing that happens, yeah.
Well, exactly, it was, and obviously, and then Con sold his yard and moved down to Sussex, so that was the connection where I am now.
Did you find that from an early stage you sort of had an affinity with riding? Did it come quite naturally to you?
Yeah, look, I was very fortunate that I grew up ponies, you know, show jumping, hunting, doing all that type of things, and I never really set out to be a jockey, and I was very fortunate I could. I actually went into racing. I was pupil assistant trainer for a couple of years, and then when you had to be an amateur, you couldn't just be an amateur then. You had to be a pupil assistant.
Really?
Yeah, it was a stupid rule, and obviously they've changed it now. So that was the only way you could get your amateur licence. So yeah, I did. So
were you not light enough to ride on a flat straight away, or were you just more interested in jumps?
No, I was a bit in limbo. I was like 9 stone 3, 4, around that sort of weight, and actually rode point to pointing. I must have had about 20, 25 rides point to points, and then obviously went national hunt, amateur, rode for Harvey Smith up there, and then I turned conditional and just did it completely the wrong way around.
Mind you, Ryan Moore started off as amateur, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He rode a winner over hurdles, I think Toaster or something like that. So I think it's a great advantage if you can do something like that. You know, sort of.
Do you think it helped you long term?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was funny when I went from the jumps to the flat. I had no claim, and I asked a few of my friends who are flat jockeys, good jockeys, and they said, "Oh, you're mad. You won't do any good. You got no claim. No one's going to put you up." So I often remind them of that now and again. So
do you know what? I can't stop laughing. You know, it was just flashback memory. Do you remember you got kicked in the paddock at Sandown? You got kicked in the paddock at Sandown. You got kicked badly. I mean, you heard the noise from the other side.
Sounds hilarious, mate.
Well, he got kicked in the leg. So anyway, he goes down, right? So he's down like a footballer in the penalty area. So they carried him back in the weighing room. So we rode, came back in. So we went to see how he was, and then doctors with him, Lucy. And Jim's led there, and he's shaking because he's like in so much pain, and they've given him painkillers. And I said, "What do you think, Lucy?" She said, "Well, Jim's a tough lad. He's a jump jockey. He's a tough lad. He wouldn't be like this. It must be broken." So anyway, they took him off to hospital. He's badly bruised.
I wanted to talk about a couple of your big victories, actually, when you started riding over jumps. I think we're going to look at a couple of them. One of those being Crossbow Creek, of course, won the Lanzarote for you, one of the most competitive handicap hurdles of the season. And we can take a look at it here. Just talk us through, and I hasten to add, Jim, if you remember it that well.
Is that green cap?
Yeah, it looked like a sack of potatoes on him. He was a decent horse. I remember we went round the inside the whole way, which is unusual for me. And yeah, it's good. He jumped really well, and it was a nice race to win. I went on to ride him at the Cheltenham Festival in the County Hurdle and Aintree, and I think I packed up the year after that. I switched to the flat. He went on to be a decent chaser as well. Mark Rymel trained him, and yeah, he was a decent horse.
Was that before they put the all-weather track in on the inside?
I don't know.
Didn't look like it was there, so I assume it probably was.
Well, Jim was surprised it wasn't black and white.
Surprised you found footage of it, to be fair, yeah.
Did you ride much at Cheltenham, Jim?
A few spins there, yeah. Yeah, Cheltenham's like lovely track. Aintree, you know, I was based up the north, and the last year I came down, I was with Dave Roberts, and I was having actually a good year, and Dave Roberts was quite keen for me to stay on the jumps. But like I said, I just found myself in limbo, really, and riding more winners on the flat. And I didn't really want to do the two. It was all or nothing, really.
Yeah. Did you ever get to the festival in Cheltenham?
Yeah, a few spins there. Like I said, I rode Crossbow Creek in the County Hurdle.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So, yeah.
Is it enjoyable riding over jumps? Or I suppose if you've got a horse that's going well and jumping well, is it a real high?
Best feeling, honestly. When you get a really good jumper, whether it be a 2-mile chaser or a hurdler, and you just know he's going to do something when you get down to that fence. He's going to, you know, safe. And it's the best feeling in the world, you know.
Can I compare that feeling you got, for example, riding Crossbow Creek in the Lanzarote, seeing good strides and that kind of thrill you just mentioned there, to, say, the thrill of riding Batash over 5 furlongs instead of King George at Goodwood? What's the difference between the two feelings?
That's a good question. Both are an adrenaline rush, probably more so over jumps. You know, I always felt when I went to the flat, that's when it became a business. You know, things changed then. And like jumps was, I wouldn't say I took it seriously because I did, but the flat was just completely different. There's much more involved all round, breeders, owners, you know.
Bit more pressure.
I would say not pressure, but like you realise it's the job's got to be done properly, you know.
I guess, yeah, riding some of these really exciting horses on the flats who have done great things in Group 1 company and are continuing to do so. When you're riding these kind of horses, is there a sort of pressure in your mind that one day most of these, or at least some of them, are going to go on to try and have a career at stud? Is that in the back of your mind as well?
Well, it's definitely not pressure, but it's important. I mean, obviously with Shadwell, we try and produce stallions, and we have been so lucky the last, 7 or 8 years that nearly every year one's come along. So, yeah, it is important, on those big days, to get it right.
I remember when you first started riding on the flat. Was it 2004, 5 or something like that?
Around there, 6,
I remember you were a big shouter, weren't you, in a finish?
Yeah.
You've calmed down a bit with that, haven't you?
Sometimes.
Honestly, Tom, you come round the bend and you just hear him screaming and shouting. You'd be looking at him, what's going on? Big shouter riding a finish, weren't you?
Yeah, and when I went from jumps to the flat, like a lot of jump jockeys would growl at the horse, and it was almost just a common thing. And then when I came to the flat, you just started doing it. But now we've got the number of smacks reduced. And there's quite a lot of flat lads doing it now.
Is it really?
Yeah, it does work. Obviously, I don't do it as much now, but it does work. And I did get a bit of stick of that when I started.
When you first started, we were like, what's this fella on about?
I'll tell you what, I wonder if you were shouting, Jim, when you rode Ungaro at Sandown to win a very competitive handicap hurdle back in the day once again. Jim, just talk us through the end of this.
Yeah, he was a decent horse. He was trained by the Reeveleys for Sir Robert Ogden. I rode some nice horses for Sir Robert, and he was very, very good to me. He had horses based in the north of England, with the likes of Mary Reeveley, Martin Todhunter, Ferdy Murphy, and I rode some nice winners for him.
You seen a stride there, didn't you?
I think the horse did. I'm looking fairly agricultural on a finish now. I managed to tidy myself up. At least I could pull my stick through, I suppose, which is more than some.
Absolutely, yeah. Those silks, of course, became pretty famous, didn't they? The likes of Exotic Dancer, Marlborough. There were some really classy sorts. It must have been quite a thrill to wear those.
Yeah, it was good. Like I said, it was to ride for Sir Robert over jumps, and he was such a big, prominent owner. It was always nice to ride him a winner.
What's the Sandown jumps track like compared to the flat? Because I mean, whenever I've watched the jumps at Sandown as a punter and a member of the public, it always looks like such a steep finish.
Yeah, it is a tough finish, and it's the same on the flat. And I suppose riding over fences down the back there, they come very quick and fast, the railway fences, and yeah, it's a proper track. It's one of my favourites, and the flat, it's very tactical there, isn't it, Martin? Obviously, you know, it's just places you can't be around Sandown.
Especially when they steady up and...
Yeah, box seats normally, you know, if you go to sit one off the rail, one back or something like that, you can get into all sorts of trouble.
That's the thing, that's the question. Did it take you long to adapt to the flat in terms of... Because sometimes, especially in the big races, Group 1s, it's like a game of chess, isn't it?
You're exactly right. It's a game of chess, and I've always been keen doing form. Do you remember when I used to write all my form notes out and someone used to go nick my paper? Spencer or someone like that used to rob my paper, and I'd come in and be like, where's my paper? I've done all my form.
He was worse than Fran Berry making notes on his
Fran
paper.
used to make a lot of notes, didn't he?
Yeah.
So I was always mad on form, but yeah, I had to adapt quite quickly. And
Did
even
Race
now,
Beckett teach you that?
Sorry?
Did Race Beckett teach you that?
Well, listen, it was great riding for Rafe. He actually left it to me quite a lot. He was good. We were a good team.
I didn't want to bring this up, Jim, but I'm going to, I'm afraid. I did notice earlier, and I'd forgotten actually, you rode in the same year for Rafe, Talent and Secret Gesture, didn't you, before the Oaks, winning on both. But in the end, you chose Secret Gesture. You actually won a favourite. Talent went and did you at 20-1. I've got to say, that must have hurt.
Oh, it was a kick in the nuts, that one, I tell you. I never forget, Secret Gesture was an absolute aeroplane at home. Her work was unbelievable. She won the Lingfield Oaks trial, literally pulling a dust cart, and Talent won the Pretty Polly, and literally Talent could not be a 70-rated horse at home. She was such a moderate workhorse. And then I think Qatar Bloodstock came in and bought Secret Gesture, but Newsells Park retained half, and I think Spencer was riding for Qatar at the time.
Yeah.
So he was like rubbing his hands, thinking, I'm going to ride this. Very kindly, Newsells and Qatar left me on the Secret Gesture, and I thought, you know, I couldn't see her not getting beaten. She was, you know, she was really good filly, and got the perfect trip round, went round the inside, it all opened up, and down at the corner of my eye, Talent, this big white face came past me, and Hughesy basically ran away with the whole race. He was literally out of control because she was very free, and I just couldn't believe she won. She was 20-1 or 16-1, and yeah, it was one of those things. And
So,
she
thanks for
didn't stay,
bringing her
my
up,
filly.
Tom.
Yeah, sorry, your heart must have fallen. I had to bring it up then again. Sorry.
That's
Jim.
the way it goes, you know. It's funny how things work out. If maybe if it had been jocked off the other horse, I might have won on the other one. You never know.
Well, indeed. I wanted to rewind, actually, back to your early flat career, if we may, Jim. Your first Group winner, that was Hawkridge Prince, is that correct? Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
And then your first Group 1 winner, that was in the Prix Jean Prat, wasn't it, in France?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good memories?
Yeah, for sure. He was a spare ride. I think I got on Lord Shannakill. He won the Mill Reef, and then he was second in the Dewhurst. I think I might have still been a jump jockey at the time that year, the year after, still had my jump licence, and then, but yeah, and then he went on to France to win the Group 1. So he was a proper horse, placed in the St James's Palace Stakes, and one of the first really top-class horse I got to ride. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And sort of different kind of horse, I suppose, was Bulwark, wasn't he? He won the Chester Cup for you, your first Chester Cup, at a huge price.
Yeah, he was a real character, actually. Funny enough, Amanda Perrett trained him. And I think Kieran McAvoy used to ride him quite a bit.
Yeah.
And he used to have blinkers, eye shields. He was by Monjou. He never used to want to come out the yard in the mornings. He was an absolute rogue. And he couldn't hit the front too soon.
I think you got locked up. You were a bit unlucky in running at one point, weren't you? It probably suited him.
At Chester?
Yeah.
Yeah, it could have been. But it was interesting because Ian Williams rang me one day and said, I need a horse for the Chester Cup. I've got a new owner in the yard. And he was going to the sales, so I put him into him. I said, you need to do 3 things. He said, what's that? I said, geld him, do his wind, and put me on him. So he schooled him over hurdles the next day, and he fell and laid down for 20 minutes. And then they gelded him, did his wind, had a bit of time off, and then I managed to get the ride on him, and he won at 20-1, and it was Marwan Kukash's first horse.
Oh, cool.
First horse?
First
so that lit
ever
the
horse.
fire, I suppose.
So that got him in, and then he, obviously, the rest is history. He got really into it after that.
Bloodstock agents as well.
I don't know about that, but yeah, he was
went
a
to
good
finish
horse.
third in the Yorkshire Cup as well, didn't he?
Yeah, like
So
he was a talented horse.
Talented stayer at a group level for sure.
So he did his job that day anyway.
Yeah, certainly did. I wanted to talk about Berkshire as well, who was a class horse, wasn't he, for a good couple of years, and he won a few group races for you, including the Darley Stakes.
Yeah, he was good. To be honest, I think he was probably one of the most talented horses I've ever rode that never really fulfilled their potential. You know, he won the Chesham by 5-6 lengths, and he just niggling little things with him, and just never really got to see how good he was. But as a 2-year-old, he was a very, very good horse. And I think when he won this race on the television, this was on the comeback of a year off. He'd had a year off and come and beat some decent horses that day. And he had a big action on him. He always wanted soft ground. He was out of a Prix de l'Opera winner.
You needed every yard of this, didn't you, to get up and...
I remember him having a massive stride.
Yeah, huge stride. And he was a very free-going horse. The Coles trained him, and but like I said, that was a good performance, being off a year to do that.
You beat your future boss.
Sorry?
You beat your future boss.
Yeah.
Shake hand on.
Exactly.
Didn't seem to matter, though.
Nope.
Still got his good graces later on.
Yeah.
Another good horse I want to talk to you about, Here Comes When, absolute cracker, who actually was at the top level for quite a long time, wasn't he? Because, of course, eventually won the Sussex Stakes, but earlier on he was a pretty decent animal for you.
Yeah, he was. He was a really good, solid sort of Group 2, Group 3 horse. He was never really a Group 1 horse at all. He'd run well in good races, and like I said, he won the Sussex Stakes absolutely in a quagmire. It was barely on.
Was that what enabled him to raise his game at that level?
Yeah, for sure. He was a stone better when he had soft ground. You know, this is him winning at Newmarket, but like I said, when he won the Sussex Stakes, he beat Ribchester and Lightning Spear, and you know, that was his day in the sun for, I think, a 6-year-old gelding winning the Sussex Stakes.
Were you retained by Jim Affritti Hay at this stage? How did that come about?
Yeah, I was. I did a sort of 2 years riding for Jim Affritti. Really enjoyed it. Rode them some nice winners, and it's nice to see them having such a good year this year.
Yeah, they had a cracking year, didn't they, actually? Particularly at Goodwood, I seem to remember. It was
Jim would always target Goodwood because obviously it's his local track. So, yeah, it's nice to see him doing so well. He puts a lot into the game as well, so deserves it.
Absolutely. Am I right in thinking, Jim, that this was the sort of period in your life where the flat racing really took off for you, and you started to become very successful? Obviously, Shadwell came along not long after this, but it was that sort of 2-day period, wasn't it? Was it Berkshire, Here Comes When, and Madame Chiang in the space of a couple of days, who all won big races for you?
Yeah, they did. It was. I was just starting to sort of get on some nice horses. I think sort of 2015, around that sort of time.
You rode a lot for David Simcock, didn't you, when you first switched to the flat?
Yeah, he was very good to me. I rode some nice horses for David, and you know, when I first came from the jumps to the flat, I was obviously riding at the smaller meetings as well, and David would put me up, and then he started putting me on better horses, and I enjoy riding for him. He's very easy to ride for, and he doesn't tie you down. He's a good bloke. One of your mates?
Yeah, he was my best man. I was his best man.
There you go.
He was my best man. He nearly didn't turn up. He went AWOL in the morning. But, yeah, no, good trainer. He's really good. I mean, Madame Chang, and I mean, she was a good mare, wasn't she? She
was a good mare. One of Kirsten Rousing's. And
I was quite surprised. She only raced. This is her winning the fillies and mares. I mean, you had to wait for the gap to open here, didn't you?
Yeah, she was tough. She was another. She really appreciated digging the ground, and I remember the Coolmore filly. I forget her name now. She sort of threw it away a little bit here. She was talented, but
it wasn't magical then, was it?
No, I can't think of the name. It escapes me now. But that day, Madame Chang, she was tough. You know, Champions Day. It's always nice to have a winner on that day.
Yeah, she was really tough. I remember.
She only raced 9 times that mare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've ridden a few of her offspring, and you know, she seems to have passed it on. They seem to be quite talented.
That makes you feel old, doesn't it, when you start riding offspring of...
Well, it's all right in the flat. If you're riding their offspring over jumps, you're in trouble.
That's a good point.
That's true.
Chiquita was the filly in that filly and mare.
Yeah.
I tell you what, she was very quirky. I remember her
wayward, couldn't she?
Veering all over the place, not just there, but plenty of occasions.
Yeah, I think did she not go over a hedge somewhere in France? I can't
that's
remember.
Right, yeah.
But, yeah, she was a talented filly.
Yeah, she certainly was. Jim, I wanted to ask you about your idols in the flat sphere. I mean, Martin Dwyer aside, because I'm sure he was one. Who were the other jockeys you looked up to when you were getting into it?
I always... When I came, sorry?
Greville Starkey.
Greville Starkey, yeah. Listen, before my time, but they say he was very, very good judge. I would have to say I was always a big fan of Mick Cannan. I thought Mick Cannan was the first real globe-trotting jockey to go around the world. Obviously Frankie as well. Frankie's unique. He's one of those jockeys where if he's having a bad day, it normally continues bad. Yeah. But if he starts off on a winner, he's flying. And I never forget, I think it was Ascot one year, I was leading jockey all week and Frankie was behind me, but he needed 3. And he rode 3 on the last day. And I knew as soon as he rode that first one,
you knew
that
it was coming.
I knew it was coming. And I was quite sick. We drew, but he beat me on countback. But Frankie, Mick Cannan, you know, those jockeys were, for me, you know, always great to look up to.
Because, Martin, you've always said Pat Edery was one of your kind of idols, haven't you? You always thought he was fantastic.
I was just starting out and he helped me a great deal. I don't know how you found it. You were established as a jockey. I was only 18 starting out, and Pat Edery just took time to help me out and look after me, and he was just a legend.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, I mean, we rode some, well, you're still riding, but we were lucky enough to ride against some of these jockeys, like Mick Cannan, Johnny Mohaather.
So many.
I mean, Kieran Fallon, I mean, what was he like?
Kieran Fallon, you know.
Tough men.
Yeah. Proper jockeys, and even you see Gerald Mossay's just retired.
Yeah.
There's nothing he hasn't done. You know,
he had his first winner last week.
Yeah, in a listed race. Yeah, I spent a bit of time with him when I went over to France there in the summer, and he showed me around his yard and his house and all his old houses that he lived in, and I spent the day with him. It was really, really enjoyable. But yeah, Olivier Pellier, there's so many good jockeys that we were fortunate to have ridden against.
I was going through the list of trainers that you've ridden for, and you've ridden for most of the top guys, including, of course, Sir Michael Stoute. It was 2017 when Ulysses hit our screens and became a top-class horse in his own right. And, of course, you triumphed aboard him in the Eclipse. What a horse he turned out to be for you.
Oh, it's fantastic. I don't think I was first in line to ride him. I think it was a strange one because I'd been actually jocked off Eminent. I rode Eminent in the Derby and he was 4th, and they replaced me, and then Sir Michael gave me the call up to ride Ulysses this day, and I rode him in the Prince of Wales at Royal Ascot, and I thought I just got to the front too soon on him. Even there now, he probably hit the front a fraction too soon this day. I was really patient on him. Barney Roy came back at him, but luckily the line came in time.
I mean, you were a bit unlucky in a way, the fact that Barney Roy was so tough on the inside, because I think, looking at that, and I think Martin would probably agree, that I thought you made your challenge at about the right time.
You couldn't have waited any longer, you'd have got beat.
Exactly.
You were confident on him, though. I've noticed that about your style of riding now. You do like to come there, be the last to challenge and kind of keep your powder dry till you have to.
Yeah, I suppose. I don't know if I've always liked right. I think I like to sit where I land. I think you could be very aggressive from the stalls, and there's a time and a place to be aggressive in the race, you know, in the finish. But I think if you miss the kick, then you sit where you land. You don't try and ask your horse to improve, and if you jump well, don't take back, you know. I think I'm very fortunate that a lot of the trainers I ride for, they tend to leave it to me. I think when you start meddling and trainers tell you what to do, that's when it all goes wrong. And
yeah, exactly.
You can vouch for that yourself, but I'm very fortunate the people I ride for leave it to me.
Talking about, before we move on, Sir Michael Stoute, I mean, he's obviously retired this year, but you rode a lot for him.
Oh, he's brilliant. Absolutely. Like, he was my hero growing up. He was great friends with my father-in-law as well, and I remember all his good horses. So to be able to get on Ulysses, you know, there's Eqtidar, we had some really good winners with him, Mustachery. But I remember one day I rode Crystal Ocean from him as well. He was a proper horse, you know. Ulysses ran in the Arc, and we were in the paddock. And
of course, yeah, you were third to enable that year,
Third to enable, yeah. And Sir Michael Stoute's wife, Coral, said, "Are you going to give Jim some instructions?" And he just started laughing. In other words, I don't need him because he'll probably mess it up anyway. But that's the confidence Sir Michael would give you, you know.
It's what you want, though, isn't it?
Sorry?
It's what you want and what you need.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Big difference, isn't it? When you ride for a trainer who ties you down to a million instructions, and yeah, if you're just given a blank piece of paper, go out there and see what happens. It's the best way to ride, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's probably why Frankie Dettori rides so well. I mean, nobody's going to tell him what to do. Nobody's going to tell Ryan Moore what to do.
Well, when they tried was when he messed it up on Stradivarius, when they tied him down, do this, do that. That's when he was at his worst, Frankie.
You've got to be free, you know, go out, and look, you are going to make the mistake now and again. you know, and it's inevitable.
But Sir Michael had a knack of just getting more and more out of horses, didn't he? Just they improved beyond.
Just improving. I mean, Mustachey was a gelding. He was a Group 2, Group 3 horse, and he ended up winning the Lockinge with him, and he bolted it. You know, that was Sir Michael. Every year, bring one along, and just keep on improving. And I used to love riding work for him in the mornings as well.
Did you?
Oh, it was great. You know, banter. He used to imaginary write something on his hand, and chuck it, and he's laughing as well. He was a really great guy to ride for.
One of the best you've ridden for?
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt, for sure.
It's time to talk about another of the fine horses that Jim Crowley had in his career so far, and that is Mohaather. In the early days of the Friday Club, we had Marcus Tregonning on as a guest. He used to wax lyrical about how good Mohaather was as a 2-year-old, and it wasn't actually Jim Crowley who rode Mohaather in the Horace Hill to win that race. It was actually Martin Dwyer, wasn't it, Martin? Do you remember that well?
Yeah, I do, actually, yeah. Marcus always held him in high regard, and he was very good that day, hands and heels ride, and I made him.
He certainly did.
I mean, that's it.
That's why he was so good.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why he won the Sussex that day.
Yeah, Jim, you owe him a lot.
You were just a passenger. You were just along for the ride.
Yeah, he was a good horse, wasn't he?
Let's talk about his big day, shall we, the Sussex Stakes. And I thought it was a fine training performance to get him back to that point after the injury problems he'd had.
I mean, it was an absolute mess of a race.
Yeah.
I mean, I never forget, I wanted to sit last on him, and I rode him cold at Ascot, and we all came to the stand side at Ascot, and he got no run. He should have won a minute, but I still didn't want to change the plan. And I remember Sheikh Hamdan called me before the race, and he says, "I want you in the first 3," and I did what I was told, and it was one of those things that nothing worked out. I had the horses box him in, and it was a remarkable performance for what he did. Yes. He beat 2 Guineas winners, and he had to come back and loop them. And I think out of all the horses I've ever ridden that day, like, it wasn't probably one of the most exceptional performances of a racehorse that I've ever ridden.
And Baaeed is one of those at Shadwell. Let's talk about his racing career. I'm doing this a little bit of a lick of the lips. Can't wait to talk about him. He was such a wonderful horse to watch. Not many top-class horses have made their debut at Leicester, but he did, and it was rather a last-gasp success. I know that you weren't on this day, Jim, but you, at this point, were you aware of Baaeed as a horse?
No, didn't. You know, I hadn't heard much about him. I don't think anybody had, really. I mean, William had taken his time with him, and they obviously fancied him that day because he's got the first colours on. But yeah. I remember obviously tuning in to watch it. I was somewhere else at a different meeting, and I thought, that looks good. You know, I never knew it was going to be like he was, but I was impressed with him that day.
But you didn't ride him next time either, did you? Newmarket, did you?
I was somewhere else. Well, I can't remember. There was a reason why I couldn't ride him. I might have been suspended or I was somewhere else. Might have been a Group 1 on or something. I can't remember, but I certainly rode him the next time after that.
Because after that Leicester race, he bolted up in a novice, didn't he, at Newmarket, and did it in a really good time. And I think everyone was then cottoning on to him being a proper horse. And then this came along, this performance in the Sir Henry Cecil Stakes, which was quite something, really. I mean, look at him just looming up there on the far side. This was you, right?
Yeah, I rode him this day, and this is the first time I'd actually even sat on him. I hadn't even ridden him work, and I was blown away by him. And I remember William Hagger said to me after the race this day, he said, "How good do you think he is?" And I wasn't being cocky, but I said, "He's the best you've got. He'd be the best. He might be the best you've ever trained."
Really?
At that stage?
And William laughed at me and pushed me away.
Did he?
Yeah, it was a stupid quote, wasn't it? Really, but.
Well, not really, because you were right.
I just got the feeling of him was like nothing before.
Yeah.
And that, you know, and obviously after that, he just kept getting better and better.
Funny enough, I remember William Haggis actually interviewed, I think after that race, all his interviews after that, when talking about Baaeed, he came across as very nervous each time. And you could see how good he thought the horse was, but he was almost scared to run it. I think he thought it was so good. Yeah.
I mean, I think it you know, it was the apple of William and Maureen's eye. And I think William did used to get quite nervous when he used to run, and it's understandable. You know, you have a horse of that magnitude and you have to give it and put it in charge of some stupid jockey who could go and mess it all up, you know. So
you'd agree with that. was that after that Newmarket race? Was that get in a car, ring Boney, wherever that horse runs next, I'm riding it?
Yeah, I mean, I'd spoke to Dane. Dane's a really good judge, and I'd spoke to Dane after he'd won the time before and said, look, you know, he's he's good. But like I said, he got better and better and better. And
I have to say, I thought that performance in the judgment was his pièce de resistance. It was just an amazing effort visually, and you could always see during the race, all the way through, I thought he was travelling with his classic zest and enthusiasm. But as always, it was contained to the point where he could use it at the end of the race, and that's exactly what he did.
Yeah, he was. I mean, this was in my opinion, his finest performance. I mean, they didn't really go much of a gallop. And like I said, I just wanted to try and get him to relax. Like I said, he could over-travel, even over a mile. He could always take a nice hold, and But from where I am now in the race, I've got a great position, and you know, it's the rest was easy, really.
Were you thinking of Ulysses a few years earlier in riding this race, similar type?
Yeah, similar. I wanted to ride him in a similar sort of way. You know what it's like when you ride in those sort of races. You pretty much know where they've got a game plan. And like I said, Coolmore just had the one in it for a change, so I wasn't worried about 3 or 4 in the race. And obviously, all I had to do was keep tabs on William, Mishriff. Those were the 2 horses to beat.
Was it the year before that Mishriff had bolted up in this race?
It was, yeah.
So I guess with him as a target to aim at, you had all bases covered, because really I think, with great respect to him, High Definition was never going to be winning that race.
Yeah. I mean, this was the first time I actually wanted to open him up a little bit, because, everybody had come to watch him. I went back inside there, and I was lucky to go through horses. And
that was a brave move.
But do you know what I was thinking? Mick Cannan on, remember when he went to See the Stars?
He
did the split.
Baaeed horses.
Yeah, and I knew I had so much horse I could do that.
But then here you come back out again.
Well, I didn't fancy going in again. But yeah, listen, here he was just, I couldn't actually believe.
I mean, look at that, you're cantering.
I couldn't believe what I was. And actually, the horse, it took him a while to pick up, because I've held on to him for that long, and I haven't really actually given the horse a proper squeeze yet. And then
look at him go now.
It took him 5 or 6 strides, and then away we go. And it was like, I haven't had a feel off a horse like that in my lifetime.
6.5 lengths in the end it was.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have thought that with a furlong to go, would you?
No. And if I'd have kicked sooner, he'd have probably won 8 or 10.
Yeah. Phenomenal.
That was his day.
The big question I wanted to ask you, Jim, and I've been thinking about this all week, is Baaeed against his dad, See the Stars, in that race, judgment, a mile and 2.5 furlongs at York, who would have won?
I'm biased, aren't I? But I don't know. Listen, both.
Depends who rode to See the Stars.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.